do my very best to get this job that I so crave.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Fanzone Debate. We are here for an exciting one. We got Caleb Boatman returning to the ring, going up against rookie 1-0 player Robert Castner. So Robert got his win with a knockout, I believe, against Jack Pinchuk. Could be remembering that wrong. I think it was a knockout. Boatman, last time we saw him was in a wacky universe. I don't know if I actually saw it or if it just kind of like, it was like one of those like flash things. I was dreaming and, get it? Because anyway, this is going to be an exciting one. Kirk, you're here to judge this one with me. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Excited for this match. Both, from what I remember of their last match, I think they both kind of had like similar opponents to get here. Had a little bit of a similar path. But I'm always looking at styles of competition and how they're going to clash or not clash against each other. And I think, obviously we have a little less experience with Robert. We've only seen him in one match so far. But I think they're going to have somewhat similar styles. So I'm excited to see how this match is going to play out.
Yeah, I should actually mention that Caleb's last match, also a knockout against Joe Harrison. It wasn't the multiverse. It was Joe Harrison, was a knockout. So, Brian, you are here as well. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Always glad to come do another debate, judge another debate. Like Kirk, I like to hear the debates, but also it's interesting to watch the styles. Caleb tends to be a little more, shall we say, high energy than most people. Robert seems a little bit more laid back, but I don't know. We'll see what goes on this time.
Yeah. All right. So let's start by talking to the rookie, Robert. Robert, you are back after your knockout against Jack Pinchuk earlier this season. You are now here to take on Boatman. What do you think?
I agree with Brian's assessment. And by that, I mean, my goal here tonight, beyond the winning part, is to not get the Boatman wave of energy to capsize me. Meaning I don't want everything to be like in my face Boatman. So I will try to put up a shield and we'll see if that pays off. But more than likely not. It is later at night. I am winding down.
All right, fair enough. We will bring in Mr. Boatman himself. Caleb, welcome. You got a knockout against Joe last time, pretty demanding fashion. You are now here. It's a little sleepy time. You going to be high energy? What do we think?
Have you met me? The points where I am at my most high energy are when I'm tired. It's the weird, like, have you watched any Warzone match that hosts late at night? Hi.
That's fair. It's fair. All right, fair enough. Let's get into this. This is how this is going to work. So there are four prep questions based off of categories that the players drafted. And we are going to see the players tonight debate those questions before our very souls. So each question, the players are going to get a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing, after which Kirk, Brian, and I will write on our handy-dandy boards who we think won that point. Best 2 out of 3 points wins the point, and first person to 3 points wins the match. Should we be tied after the 4 prep questions, we will move on to a bonus question. Gentlemen, any questions as we get into the match?
Yep.
Then let's do this thing. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick it off with the category of directors. This was drafted by Caleb Boatman. The question is, which Albert Brooks directed film has the worst performance? So, Caleb, because you drafted this, you get to go first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
This was a really tough question because there's really not a lot of bad Albert Brooks performances. I know I'm me saying that, but that's the truth. This is easily the worst performance in any of his movies. It is Penny Marshall playing herself in Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World. The movie opens with Albert Brooks sitting down with Penny Marshall. They want to cast him in a remake of Harvey. And Penny Marshall's supposed to kind of set up the crux of the movie of Albert Brooks as a has-been at this point. The problem is all of her line delivery feels so stilted and awkward. Like she's playing herself. It shouldn't be that hard. But all of her funniest lines that are funny on paper completely crash and burn in the delivery because she has to talk about the In-Laws remake. And that should be a funny idea, but the way she delivers them feels so stilted and awkward, it does not work. It actively ruins the movie.
Time. All right. We'll move over to Robert, who has 1 minute to open his argument when he starts talking.
Caleb is correct. There aren't that many bad performances because a lot of the performances in Albert Brooks movies are somewhat similar. The thing about the Penny Marshall performance is she's a celebrity cameo. She's ostensibly a catalyst as a plot device to get him to realize that things aren't going well. And then that leads to him going to that meeting in DC and taking the appointment to go look for a comedy in the Muslim world. My pick was Rob Morrow as John's brother in the movie Mother. And the reason I picked that is because it's really one note. And Rob Morrow, leading to that point, had really decent performances, even like Emmy-nominated performances in Northern Exposure, and he was in Quiz Show. But in this one, he just really comes up as the whiny child who just desperately seeks approval from his mother. There's a lot of scenes where he's just literally being shot from a camera phone. There could have been a lot of benefit him being like this, being against them, but he's just sort of there and it doesn't make sense.
Time. All right. 5 minute free form when he starts talking. Please don't talk over each other, or I will come in and beat you with a stick. Have fun.
Okay, well, first of all, Rob Morrow, like your problems seem to be with the character, not really with the actual performance. Your problem is you're bringing up stuff about the character. The character is written as whiny and pedantic. That's kind of the whole point. It doesn't work. If he's not playing it that way, it doesn't work. That character is written that way. Ultimately, Penny Marshall is written to be funny, and her line delivery does not work. That's the difference there.
I think it does actually work. And there are situations where, Penny Marshall's a professional actress, but at that point, she hadn't been a professional actress for quite a bit of time. So you could say as a performance, there's she's being herself and saying some things. I mean, like I said, it's not really much of a performance. It's just sort of there to be the catalyst to move him along in the story. So in my mind,
it was accepted in the things. That's not really an argument. We accepted it as worst performance. So ultimately, it is a performance. We accepted it in the debate. Ultimately, Penny Marshall, you're kind of basically just saying, it's not that important. It's not what is the question isn't what is the worst important performance in an Albert Brooks movie. It is what is the worst performance in an Albert Brooks movie.
That's true, but I believe you're saying that she isn't really funny in that. I kind of think she is, and she's biting and sarcastic, which is what she's designed to be. Rob Morrow, on the other hand, he could have been this nice foil as a linchpin between John and Beatrice and really had more of an impact as the third build person. But again, he doesn't really have any growth. He's just there. And honestly, he leaves in the last act, and he could have not even been in the movie. And I think a lot of that is due to how it is that he played it. I know you're saying that there's a lot relative to how it's written, but I think if there had been a little bit more depth, he could have really stood as sort of this basis between the two of them as these two sort of polar opposites. And he's really nothing.
One of your points is that, he leaves halfway through the movie. That's a problem with the writing. That's not a problem with the character. That's a problem, or not a problem with the performance. It's a problem with the writing and the character. You keep bringing up things that are a problem with the writing and the character. Penny Marshall has funny lines. In-Laws, why did they ever remake that? That's a funny concept, but the problem is she's not playing it as sarcastic or fun. It feels like she's reading them off a cue card and that she just got those lines today. It's a genuinely bad performance. It hurts the good dialogue.
I mean, well, first of all, I know we're talking about performances. The dialogue itself within that scene isn't particularly sharp anyway. So I think she's doing the best she can with what's there. My point about Rob Morrow is, and yes, there's some things about the writing, but again, we'll move past that. There's situations where he's supposed to act as if he's superior to John. And there's points, especially near the end, when he's supposed to feel inferior to John when it looks like Beatrice is sort of shifting her focus. And I can't tell the difference between how he's acting in those situations. You would think they would be different, but in my estimation, they seem to be very similar. So
I think that's the point within the writing of the character, though. It's ultimately, this is a guy who has always been whiny and pedantic. The problem is the attention has now shifted. Ultimately, he is who he is. It's Albert Brooks that has changed, not Rob Morrow. That's the difference there. And you said earlier that Penny Marshall was funny, and now you're saying, oh, well, the lines aren't really funny. So ultimately, you're bringing two different things into it. Penny Marshall, again, she's supposed to kind of be the crux of the movie. It's supposed to set up that Albert Brooks is a has-been and doesn't really work in films anymore. And ultimately, it doesn't work because she doesn't get she doesn't put anything in it.
And I don't understand, because what you were saying was people can be funny and the lines can be bad. They can rise up against what the information is or what's going on, how it is that the scene is written. So I don't really think that sort of corresponds. I do think there are situations where she plays, you said it's sort of stilted, but she does play this like faux politeness, and that sort of moves on to being like, well, I guess we're done here. And it goes back into a sarcastic feel. I think it does hit on that a bit. I don't think it's all stilted. I think there is a little bit of range. I don't think for somebody who's supposed to be in the movie for a good bit, and it's supposed to be, like I said, a integral part, or seemingly an integral part, Rob Morrow doesn't seem as if he has any growth. And there's a lot of people in the movie and Mother who have growth, at least the two main people, and he doesn't have any. And I think that has to do with how it is that he played the role.
That's the way the character is written at the end of the day.
Time. Okay. Robert, we are going to start with you for your 1 minute closing when you start talking.
Boatman said a lot about how I'm making most about how it is that things are written, but I think actors do sort of integrate how they believe they think the character should be. And I think Rob Morrow and Mother, even though there are different methods of how it is that he's supposed to be within the movie, he plays it all very similarly. And he feels like he's in a different movie in a lot of respects, to the point that when he leaves, nothing's really changed. He really didn't actually even need to be in the movie because of how that goes. Penny Marshall, as the Albert Brooks' celebrity cameo friend, does her job. And I think she does it well enough that he does feel slighted. He does feel as if he came in for no good reason. And she does move him along in the story to get to the point where he takes that appointment. So I'm not really sure what it is that she didn't do. And she's sarcastic and biting as she's supposed to be. So it seems like she sort of did her job. And I don't think Rob Morrow actually did. I think he sort of failed. And that's why he was gone.
Time. All right. Move over to Boatman for his 1 minute closing when he starts talking.
Again, you're saying, oh, well, he didn't even need to be in the movie. That's a problem with the writing of the character. You keep bringing up points that have nothing to do with the actual performance. That's about the writing of the character. Penny Marshall is actually really well written. I think her line about, oh, if I want to see a range, I'll just watch The In-Laws again. That's a funny line. It is a well-written line. The problem is the way she delivers it is so slow and stilted and awkward. It doesn't work. She's not playing it as sarcastic. It doesn't come off as sarcastic. It comes off as very unprofessional. Rob Morrow, like his performance or don't, or like the character or don't, his performance is exactly the way that character should be within the film. That's the thing. That character is written as whiny and kind of the same throughout, and Morrow plays it to a T. It is exactly how that character is written. Penny Marshall hurts the script. Rob Morrow plays to the script.
Time. Okay. Bring in the judges. Good judges?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to kick this off. I went with Caleb. I thought this was close. And I think part of that has to do with I haven't seen either of these movies, so I don't know. But based off of what I was given, I think Caleb was honestly kind of fighting an uphill battle because I thought Robert's like point about like, well, she's only in the movie for like a quick moment. It's a cameo almost, even though it was accepted. It's just a shorter performance, and she does what she needs to do. But by the end, I thought Caleb convinced me why the things that Robert was saying against Morrow, like he's the same. He wouldn't even really be missed if he wasn't there. Caleb had convinced me why those things were like part of the movie and why Morrow was playing that to perfection. I thought that his final line there of like is playing to the script. Marshall is playing against the script and actually hurting bad a scene that would be good with another person. I think that was strong. So I went with Caleb, but I thought it was close. I thought Robert did a really good job. So Brian.
After the first section of the debate, I thought, Caleb actually kind of hit it on the head. What I was thinking was that, Robert was talking a lot about, this character doesn't have growth, or this character, was wasted. They could have done so much more with this character, and how that was not about the performance so much as the character and the story. Later in the debate after that, though, I mean, Robert, I thought, did a pretty good job of trying to redirect his approach. He made a really good point at the end when he was talking about how Penny Marshall did her job. She came on, just basically did her cameo thing, whereas Rob Marshall did not do his job. But I don't think he did quite enough to come back from the early stuff. Sorry, Caleb.
Okay. Kirk, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
Yeah, I also went with Boatman. Having not seen either of these movies, he just did more to convince me that Penny Marshall was more detrimental to what was given to her than the other character was. He had specific examples. I think it was just one of those situations of, a fighter just knowing his category so well in and out and being able to kind of overwhelm with information.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to move on to question number 2, which is in the category of the MCU. This question was drafted by Robert. The question is, who is the best new character from Phase 4 of the MCU? So, Robert, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I think being the best new character means even though you're not the person who's the movie supposed to be the focus on, you basically steal every scene that you're in. And in my opinion, the best person who does that, especially in Phase 4, is Yelena from Black Widow. You end up feeling more for her as the baby sister in this arranged family who's removed from her home so young than anybody else within the movie. It's heartbreaking during the beginning. She's this 6-year-old girl. She gets dropped into the situation. She gets left behind, and Tasha becomes an Avenger. Not only beyond the emotional crux of the movie, she's the funniest character. Every scene, even against heavy hitters, everything is drawn to her. In her fight scenes, you get the impression that she could kill Natasha if she really wanted to. So she has badassery. She's funny. She's emotionally resonant. Consequence of the Black Widow movie is that we got that post-credit scene so that she could move on and be in Hawkeye. So in my opinion, it's no contest, Yelena, by a mile.
Time. Okay. We are going to move over to Boatman. Boatman, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I'm going to stress that the question is best new character within the MCU. So a character that is new to the MCU, and that character that is new to the MCU is Peter Parker 3 or Andrew Garfield. It might be Peter 2, but whatever they call him. Andrew Garfield, he is 3. Andrew Garfield is so good and gets so much more emotion and more to do in this one than he ever has before. He, as a new character, even if you've never seen a Garfield movie, everything that gets set up, you could argue, oh, the Gwen Stacy fall, you need to see that. No, because they accurately convey it, and the way Garfield portrays that, it feels so heartbreaking. You don't need that, and then you get the emotional pull of him saving MJ. It is such a perfect thing. Yelena, it's not that interesting. I'm sorry, she doesn't get that much to do. She just is kind of new Black Widow. She's not more interesting or get anything to do more than Black Widow. Ultimately, Garfield has so much to do here.
Time. Okay. Peter 3 versus Yelena. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Well, I'm going to start, if that's cool. So I think what your basis of your argument, yes, I'm not going to argue about that, Peter Parker 3, Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield was in other things, and thus it's a weird argument. I'm not going to argue against that. What I'm going to say is that a lot of people enjoyed that, or they felt like there was a lot of redemption from what had happened in previous Amazing Spider-Man movies going to this. And you talked about how he had much more to do, but I think there's a lot of good Peter Parker Spider-Man stuff in those Amazing Spider-Man movies, especially with the Gwen Stacy thing that you sort of brushed over, that I actually don't think he's necessarily needed in this movie at all. And I think a lot of the emotional work is done on the back of Tom Holland and everything that happens from the Mysterio reveal. So even if Andrew Garfield wasn't in it, it wouldn't matter. But I think Yelena, there's no real Black Widow movie without Yelena, because she's the one who starts what happens with the Black Widows being under my control and sets the course of the entire thing. So it's just something that I think isn't the most sound argument because of what had happened before.
Ultimately, Garfield, I mean, if we want to talk about other things, Yelena doesn't get good until Hawkeye, so you need a whole TV show that doesn't even count here in order to make that argument. But if we're talking about other things playing to play, no, exactly everything that is given to us in No Way Home is exactly what Garfield needs. We don't need any of the backstory. You can go in with this being your first introduction to Garfield's Spider-Man. Ultimately, like I said, the way he talks about Gwen's death in this movie is so powerful and emotional that it works, and you don't even need to have seen it. Ultimately, Yelena is it's Black Widow 2. I'm sorry, Yelena is Black Widow 2. Florence Pugh isn't doing anything interesting. She's just kind of a blank face. It's Black Widow 2. It's the same character, but new.
That's crazy, because Yelena is by far funnier than Black Widow could ever hope to be, and that crux of that taken into Hawkeye is built on what happens here in Black Widow with the posing stuff and the idea of the pockets that she gives her that, and that comes out later on in what happens in Infinity War. We see that there, but I think you're belittling her performance a bit. As it relates to Andrew Garfield, though, I mean, he doesn't even show up till there's an hour left in the movie, and there's a lot of emotional things that have happened, a lot of turns in the first two acts that don't rely on him whatsoever. And I mean, honestly, he comes off as the most self-loathing, and I think there's a lot of heavy-handedness with how they try to handle him, because they're trying to do this redemption thing that they really didn't even need. And honestly, you could even say he's the worst of the Peter Parkers if you wanted to, because a lot of people like how it is that Tom Holland plays all the way through that movie, and how Tobey Maguire gets a chance to come back after so much time, and it's like he never left. This argument.
Toby gets to come back and just do the same Toby thing, and that's all he's doing. Like, that's not a point here. It's just, Toby came back, and some people like Tobey Maguire more. He doesn't do anything to actively improve on the character. I don't know why you're bringing up the self-loathing argument, because I think that's what makes the character so good, is that this is a character who can do these incredible things, but is really down on himself and has these confidence issues. And I think that is such an interesting aspect of a character that we don't really get to see. Ultimately, Yelena, you had to bring up Hawkeye again, and you're bringing up the comedy aspect. Red Guardian is the funniest character in that movie. I don't know what we're doing here. Red Guardian gets the best lines. Yelena doesn't get anything. If we're talking, she's funnier than Black Widow, Black Widow gets a lot of funny lines. A lot of funny scenes and lines. I love the scene in the first Avengers where she's like doing the interrogation, and her delivery on, this asshole's giving me everything, is such a great moment.
I mean, Yelena does get the joke about the ripping out the reproductive organs and talking about fallopian tubes, which is pretty funny, and what happens at the dinner table, and all those different things that do have a lot of comedy work within it. I'm bringing up Hawkeye just because it's a through line, and it also bears to mention that she's one of only two new characters who gets to appear more than once, and new people actually want to see in different things. And, honestly, she's the only one who technically helps drive two stories, where I don't even think Andrew Garfield necessarily helps drive this. He's just sort of there as a cherry on top. But I mean, there's even more interesting characters beyond him that aren't the Spider-Man, like Norman Osborn in that movie. So honestly, Andrew Garfield can get lost in what's going on there.
If you wanted to pick Norman Osborn, you could have picked Norman Osborn. Ultimately, Yelena, you're also, just a quick question. What's the other thing that Yelena is in? You said she's
Hawkeye.
in two things.
She's in Hawkeye.
No, that's a TV show. That's not a point. That
Phase 4, and this is part of Phase 4. I know it's
time. All right. We are going to start with Boatman. 1 minute when you start talking.
Robert has to put other things into his argument about the TV show, which does not count here, just for the clarification, because Yelena doesn't actually work in Black Widow. That's the problem. Garfield works on his own despite having stuff in the past. Yelena needs Hawkeye to work, and Hawkeye doesn't count. That's why Robert had to use Hawkeye as his argument. He said, oh, she's the only new character we've seen in 2 things. No, she isn't, unless you're counting the TV show. So ultimately, the crux of Robert's argument is built around Hawkeye. The crux of my argument is built around a character with actual emotion, a character who gets real resolution within the context of his movie. He gets he might have little screen time, but he does everything with that little bit of screen time, whereas Yelena does not get that much to actually be as a personality. She might be necessary to the plot, but ultimately that's the plot. As an actual character, a human being, Yelena doesn't work.
Time. Okay, Robert, we will move over to you. 1 minute when you start talking.
It's funny Boatman mentions that he thinks I said Hawkeye was the crux of my argument when I was just bringing it up as an additional thing. I mentioned that in Black Widow, she is the heart, she's the comedy, she is the soul. She's really the only thing that truly stands out in a mediocre movie, and she doesn't get to do anything. She kills the main villain in General Dreykov because, you know, it was trusted for her in the movie to have that moment, and she does. Andrew Garfield in No Way Home, he can get brought to the sidelines a little bit. How much different is he as a character, especially in those emotionally weighty scenes like on the rooftop, than Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker? It's virtually the same backstory. He just has a dead girlfriend. Even you could say things like, you know, it doesn't really matter what it is that we're talking about in regards to Hawkeye. Yelena in Black Widow, it's heartbreaking from beginning to end, but she does what she can. She feels slighted. She feels pain. You feel the pain for her, but you also laugh with her because she has a lot of good lines. She delivers them well. Florence Pugh is a wonderful actress, and it all comes to the surface as she plays that character.
Time. Okay. I'm going to bring in El Judgeritos.
Can I have the question?
Yes, sir. What is the best? Who is the best new character from Phase 4 of the MCU? Okay.
I gotta go first, huh?
You do, my friend. Yes.
Dang it.
All right, Kirk.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, this was super tight for me. And it's equal because anybody who knows me knows these are 2 characters I really don't care about at all. So I was not excited about seeing either of these in the movie necessarily. But and I think they both gave, for a long time we were arguing about most important, and they kind of course corrected and we were going around. So a lot of things to consider. I obviously disagree very much with Robert that it's a great performance and she's a good actress. I also disagree with Boatman that she goes to this movie with a blank face. She goes to the movie with a frowny face because that's the one face she has. But ultimately, by here, I did give it to Robert. I think he just had a little bit more about how Garfield does kind of get lost, and Elena had more on her shoulders and had more to do in this movie. So even though I threw out the TV argument, I think they both talked about that too much. But like I said, by the slightest of margins, 49-51, it goes to Robert.
What if John Cazale had played Yelena?
Oh, well then, yeah, definitely.
Home run.
No question.
All right, I'll go next. Yeah, I thought this was really close as well. There was something though that like I did message in the middle of the thing. I was like, did I hear this right or did I hear this wrong? And I believe if I might have to go back and check the tape, but I'm pretty sure Caleb Boatman is the one who brought up Hawkeye first before Robert Castner, and then he continued to use that as a driving force against Robert. So I thought that was weird. But that being said, neither of these are the choices I would have picked for the question, but I think they're both very good choices. I'm not like Kirk. I like these performances and I like these movies and these characters. And I know Brian does too a lot. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I'm trying to collect all my thoughts. I went with Robert. I thought that when it came to best character, Robert did a really good job of explaining all of the things that, and Boatman did this too, but I think Robert, just like Kirk said by a hair, of all of the great things that this character gets to do, that we're going to get to see them do more and set up. And even if you take the Hawkeye TV show out of it, she's literally given the post-credit scene of the movie to set up something new for fans. And I thought that his hit on Boatman about there's like McGuire is basically doing the same exact thing he's doing as that Garfield's doing, and even Green Goblin is a more interesting character. I don't think that necessarily means that Robert had to take Green Goblin in order for it to disqualify Garfield. Like he could have picked Shang-Chi or Xialing or something too. So I went with Robert. Brian, where are you voting?
Yeah, as opposed to the first question where I hadn't seen either movie, so I'm going, by the debate. This question, I've seen both of them. I like both of them. So, I mean, while I am being impartial listening to the debate, I do have my own thoughts on the movies that they have to kind of play against. And honestly, I voted for Robert as well, mainly because I think that Boatman didn't do a good enough job to convince me how Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker works without the previous stuff. I think that if you looked at just this, if somebody did come in brand new to this, yes, they'd know he'd lost someone and here he got to save someone, redeem himself. It's not quite the same as seeing him, her falling the same way and him saving her the exact same way. It's like exact moment that he just got to redeem himself and things like that I think you do need to have seen the previous movies. Whereas I don't think you need Hawkeye to appreciate Yelena.
Okay, fair enough. So we are tied 1-1 as we get into the next question. Which is going to be in the category of Disney animation. This was drafted by Boatman. The question is, which pre-1980s Disney animated movie would be the worst to translate to live action? All right, Boatman, you get to go first. 1 minute when you start talking.
My pick for this is Saludos Amigos. I think that this is a film that is not a film. It's barely a film. It counts as a film, but it's just a grouping of segments. I don't know how you make this a live action. There's a weird segment of a paintbrush painting a scenery, and the animation comes to life there. You've got a segment about a plane named Pedro who it's just about Pedro delivering letters. Nothing happens. There is nothing in this movie that happens. You couldn't make this a live action movie. It wouldn't work. There is nothing here that would translate well to live action because A, it's so dependent on the animation that ultimately if you tried to translate to live action, it would A, look weird, B, it wouldn't make any sense because so many of these segments are about the animators drawing what they see in Brazil and other parts of Latin America.
Okay. All right. We move over to Robert for his 1 minute opening when he starts talking.
In the current day of the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers remake that we had, I was looking at Saludos Amigos and I was thinking some sort of anthology, Roger Rabbit-like hybridization, human CGI. Hollywood studios running out of ideas domestically. They go to a trip to other regions of the globe to further understand other societies, what it is that they watch, and how they tap into international markets, maybe introducing some of the animation stuff drawing, kind of similar to what you'd seen like a Mary Poppins with the chalk drawings in the chalk world. I chose the Aristocats, and I based this off the fact that we've had a lot of Disney live adaptations recently, we're basing the whole of the character grouping around animals, and they tend to be unexpressive computer-generated entities that lack heart and take audiences out of the enjoyment of the viewing experience. And there's a large focus on the Aristocats where animals are singing and dancing. And can you imagine how realistic that would be to transition from animation to that? I can't imagine it. That's why I picked it, because it seems like it would be terrible.
Time. All right. 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
ultimately, there's nothing. You're not making Saludos Amigos if you're not taking the actual segments in Saludos Amigos. There's nothing in those segments that would actually work as a film because Saludos Amigos at itself is barely a film. The Aristocats, ultimately, you're saying, oh, the animal, adaptations don't work. Are we going to pretend the Jungle Book didn't happen? If you get a good director and a good visual effects team that has the time to work on it, absolutely the Aristocats can work. Ultimately, Saludos Amigos is barely a movie. It's a series of segments.
Yeah, but you've been able to take things that could be segmented and make them into an anthology movie. Maybe it's an adventure series, Saludos Amigos, and a title into a different place, and then you include some of the animation in that. They go to different regions and they explore aspects of different cultures, which I thought was somewhat of the point of going through Saludos Amigos, getting an appreciation for the Latin American culture, which I think sort of plays into something as we move along to be more culturally sensitive. I will say that even though, Aristocats is like a movie, you can't sweep under the rug. There's a lot of horribly offensive things that are in the Aristocats that, they were available in the original. If you try to remake it, and there's
besides the one thing during Everybody Wants to Be a Cat, what is there?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I missed.
Besides the awful thing in Everybody Wants to Be a Cat, what is there?
I mean,
you can just take that out. That's
those horrific depictions are not just in Everybody Wants to Be. They're in the end part of the climax when they rescue.
Okay, take that character out. You can take that character out of the movie.
Okay.
Ultimately, that doesn't affect the movie because that character's in that movie for about 5 minutes. It is an insignificant character to the movie. It doesn't change the core of the Aristocats. You're trying to change the core of what Saludos Amigos even is. You want to make it an adventure movie. That's not Saludos Amigos. Call it under a different name. That's not an adventure story whatsoever. Ultimately, you're just completely just taking the title and changing everything. Ultimately, you can still do the core story of the Aristocats. O'Malley is a great character. Duchess is a great character. The kids are a lot of fun. You can do that as a movie.
I don't really think all those characters are great characters. I think especially the female depictions are pretty one note and pretty of the pre-80s Disney era where they didn't really have strong female characters. Every female character was seemingly reliant on the male characters to move them along and to help them out. I mean, Duchess, without O'Malley, would have just sort of stuck under a bridge with her cats and probably died without him. So I don't really think all those characters are particularly strong. There's a lot of shared DNA with movies that have sort of already happened. There's really no logical reason to retread something that the Aristocats is frankly worse at and on tires that are already bald and something that's already done.
What you're talking about with Duchess is just plain not true. Duchess actually is one of the more interesting female characters in Disney. A lot of the early female characters are just whiny or they don't do anything. Duchess has to be strong for her kids when she's in this very dark environment of losing from their home, and she's not yes, O'Malley points her in the right direction, but she's not useless without O'Malley. She could have found, really, it's Abigail and Adelaide and Amelia, two female characters who actually point O'Malley in the right direction, so your point about that is also incorrect.
The only reason they were pointed in the wrong direction is because Marie fell off O'Malley was getting them in the right direction. Marie fell off and went into the water, and he saved her, which is another aspect of a female character.
He saved a child. Oh no!
But I'm saying that you're saying that he didn't know where he was going, and he absolutely was. There's just something in the plot that tried to go against him. I think Saludos Amigos is, on the whole, kind of supposed to be an educational movie because we're supposed to learn about a lot of things, and I think everybody, especially lately, has sort of been more insulated with the pandemic. So I think Saludos Amigos is a nice opportunity to open things up to people, an audience, about the wonders of life outside of kind of our standard day-to-day stuff. And
an educational movie in 2022?
No, just something that we educate about, how we're very America-centric, but we can go out and we can see the influences of other things in America. And I think people have forgotten that, especially now in these times. And I think there's a lot of fairy tale, the story of the Three Planes, there's a lot of fairy tale influence in that. And I mean, Disney takes a lot of fairy tale influences to make.
There's nothing fairy tale about the story of the Three Planes. I really understand what you're talking about here.
It has a kind of like a Three Bears situation. There's Mama, daddy and the baby bear, and they.
That's because there's a mom, a dad, and a
Time.
child.
All right, Robert. We're going to start with you. 1 minute closing when you start talking.
I think movies can be rife for an update, and they can still have the themes and the feelings of that movie, but they can go in a different direction. They rebooted, remade, and that's what I think you can do with Saludos Amigos. It can be an opportunity to teach people, move us out of our U.S.-centric ways of thinking, and think about impact of culture, and employ some of this animation into live action. Like I said, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers was able to do that. Why couldn't we do that with the Saludos Amigos? The Aristocats. I think it's just something that's been done too much. And when it has been done, it's been done in a horrific way. You add in the idea of a big part of that movie is that they're singing and animals playing musical instruments. And when you try to do that, and you think you could try to do that and relay it into a live action format, it gets a little muddled. Nobody gave a crap about Lady and the Tramp, for instance. All these things sort of apply that we don't really need a live action version. And if you want a movie where the butler perpetrated the crime, watch Clue. It's a better movie.
Time. Okay. We will go over to Boatman for his 1 minute closing when he starts talking.
I don't know where the Clue argument comes into, because the butler did it is one of the most common tropes in all of literature and media. So that's a non sequitur. Ultimately, you're also talking about visual effects and animals. Ultimately, again, Jungle Book, Jungle Book, Jungle Book. You never took down Jungle Book because that was an example. There are animals singing in Jungle Book. You got Baloo, you got King Louie singing in the Jungle Book remake. That works there. There's really good visual effects in Jungle Book, to the point where Jungle Book won an Oscar. If you put that level of quality and energy into the Aristocats, you can actually make it better. And also, you can take out some of the offensive stuff that Robert was talking about and improve on the Aristocats, whereas Saludos Amigos can't be improved upon because it doesn't work as a film. It's barely a film. The story about the three planes is boring. Nothing actually happens within that story. You have, sure, it's a mom, a dad, and a kid, but that doesn't mean it's a fairy tale. Ultimately, it's just about a plane delivering some packages. There's nothing interesting that actually happens.
Time. Okay. All righty.
I'm sorry. Can I get the question one more time on this one as well?
Yes, you can.
Is Cody here?
The question. Which pre-1980s Disney animated movie would be the worst to translate to live action? Also, yes, I changed locations. Okay.
Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're
I'm gonna
good.
calculate one more thing in my brain here. Okay.
All right, Brian, you're going first.
All right. First, I want to say that you both almost lost me to start invoking Clue as a good movie. Just saying. But Caleb started off super strong. I mean, he talked about why Saludos Amigos couldn't make a good movie, how it was made of segments, how nothing happens, all these things. But honestly, then Robert pitched me a movie that worked. He found an approach like how you could update this, how you could make it into a movie that could be interesting, and what you could do with it to make it a more modern movie and do something with the story. So I give it to Robert.
All right, Kirk.
Yeah. This is another tough one for me. Very, very close. I think they both had great arguments. I think they both, defended their movie well, or didn't defend their movie well, supported the other movie, however you want to phrase that. But ultimately, I also went with Robert because I think the crux of Boatman's argument was that his movie couldn't be remade. And I think by bringing it up, he put the remake on the table. So theoretically, we have to come up with some kind of remake. And I think Robert gave us enough ideas as to why the remake could happen and could work and would be a positive thing. So that's why, again, this was another 59-41 for me. But
I actually went with Caleb. I thought that it also was close. I thought that Robert did a good job of explaining that, like, coming in here with a pitch for what a Saludos Amigos movie would look like live action, I thought was really interesting, and kind of the idea that he gave. I was waiting for Robert to bring up like Alice in Wonderland, which is not a direct, like people consider it a remake, but it's not a direct remake. It's almost a sequel. That like these live action reboots, sequels, remakes can be more than just a carbon copy. But I thought Caleb actually did a good job of explaining to me like all of the things that Robert was bringing up as negatives for the Aristocats, of why it couldn't translate well. Boatman gave me plenty of reasons of why. Well, just take that out, do this, and it will work. So I thought that went really well. But that is why we have 3 judges. So Robert is up 2-1 as we get into the next question, which is going to be in the category of sports. This was drafted by Robert, and the question in sports is, what is the best non-fandom football movie? So, Robert, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
When I think of American football movies, because again, we're not getting into soccer, throw that the hell out of there. I want 3 things from my American football movie. I want realistic football, I want a good speech by a coach, and I want trials and tribulations that are either overcome or that our protagonist team gets up to the line of overcoming. Maybe they don't quite hit it. And that's why I chose the 1993 movie, The Program. I think there's a lot of cool aspects dealing with college teams. I don't think that's done necessarily as well. I think college, high school football sometimes have a leg up on movies that center around pro football. But either way, I think there's a lot of great football stuff in it. I think there's a central thing about The Program being around football, whereas Boatman's movie, Heaven Can Wait, I think football is just sort of an aftermath thing. I know there's plot points of it, but I don't really feel like you get a lot of the football. And I think it's sort of lost in the background. And, you know, it could be a nice drama, but it's not really a football movie, in my opinion. I know it was accepted, but I think that sort of plays against Heaven Can Wait.
Time. Okay. We'll bring in Caleb for his opening. 1 minute when you start talking.
Well, as Robert already introduced before I even got a chance to, my movie is Heaven Can Wait. But I think that ultimately, if the question was, what is the best representation of football in a movie? Even then, I don't even think Robert's argument is correct. But that's what Robert's arguing right now, is best representation of football in a movie. He's doing all these criteria. I'm arguing best football movie, as in the best movie. And that is where I'm going with Heaven Can Wait, because Heaven Can Wait, you get a great performance from Warren Beatty. You do get a great speech by a coach within Jack Warden, talking to Warren Beatty, basically being like, kid, you're in this body. I know you were a great football player once, but this body isn't going to cut it. I think that's great. You do have some great football scenes towards the end with him with the LA Rams. I think that ultimately, even though there's other stuff going on, the football stuff is great and the non-stuff is great.
All right. Shocking to nobody. I haven't seen either of these. So,
Well,
yeah,
can't win them all.
5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Bowman, I'm going to push back on you a little bit. I honestly think Heaven Can Wait feels a bit dated to me with how the league stuff operates, how it is that it's sort of, I like there to be a prescient and a modernization with my football movies, and that movie sort of feels out of touch without it.
From the 70s, and it's a
I know,
representation of football in the 70s.
But there are
a modern movie. Watch a modern movie. This is a movie from the 70s.
There are sports movies that feel like they could be of a modern time, like a Slapshot, for instance. But we'll get past the idea of when it is that this came out. I honestly think there are parts in the remake, the Down to Earth movie, that I actually think play a bit more into what goes on in the plot and the scenario. I wish the movie was a bit funnier, given how sort of outrageous it is. I think it's a better direction for that story than how it is they try to play up the drama and the emotional aspects, which I think actually even fall flat. Even the the emotional crux of that movie being the relationship between Warren Beatty and the woman who comes in, it just doesn't really hit for me. So I think there are things in the program that actually emotionally sort of set stage and play a lot better than what happens in Heaven Can Wait.
Your movie undercuts itself. You're talking about, comedy and drama doesn't work. Have you seen the program? Ultimately, the comedy undercuts the drama, and the drama undercuts the comedy. The goofy moment with the guy hitting his head on the glass window, I don't even know if that was supposed to be funny or dramatic. It just felt awkward. Ultimately, the program is a movie that just feels so tonally confused that the two tones undercut each other. Craig Sheffer doing like a bad Nicholson impression throughout the movie. Heaven Can Wait. I think you're talking like there's some great moments here. I think you get some good comedy with Charles Grodin. You also get some really good emotional stuff towards the end, especially when he realizes he's inevitably going to die in this body, is such a powerful scene. And you have Jack Warden, who provides a lot of comedy, being like, dude, this body's like 50 years old. You're not going to be able to play football in it. I think that Heaven Can Wait bounces the comedy and the drama so much better than the program, where both undercut each other.
I don't think there's a lot of undercutting, honestly. I think the best performance between the two movies that sort of marries comedy and drama a lot better than everything else that shows up in Heaven Can Wait is how James Caan plays as the coach. You get a lot of emotional resonance with him, how he interacts with his players, with Alvin after his injury, with Gibbon Joe, and how he understands his background of recklessness. There's the pep talk he gives in the middle of the second half with Joe, where Joe doesn't have his legs under him and they need to beat Georgia Tech to get into the bowl game. And he makes it his personal mission to ensure Lafferty, who's the guy who you said didn't understand, he didn't understand why it is that he was, smashing his head on the windows or what that really meant. But it's because
that's not what I said, but fair.
You said it didn't really make sense in what was the
I said the moment didn't work because I didn't know if it was supposed to be comedic or dramatic because it felt so goofy. That's what I'm talking about. Ultimately, you're bringing up another of the biggest problems in the movie, which is that there's way too many characters in this for us to actually care about any of them. There's so much balance of, we've got the storyline with the football player falling in love with the tutor. We've got the alcoholism storyline. We've got the Heisman storyline. There's so much going on here that we don't actually get to connect with anyone because ultimately we don't spend enough time with anybody, and that's the biggest problem. Ultimately, with Heaven Can Wait, we connect to Warren Beatty. We like Mr. Jordan and how he kind of spiritually guides him. We like Jack Warden and how he, athletically guides him. And the villains are a lot of fun in this with Diane Cannon, who was nominated for an Oscar, and Charles Grodin.
I don't think there's that many characters. Usually when you have a football movie, it's a football team, and they really focus on four people, and some of the storylines you're talking about are married together and one character. So I don't think there's too much that's spread out. I think really the best emotional moment amongst all those movies is when Coach Winters and Lafferty have that moment at the end when, Lafferty makes that play and he comes in and he cries at James Caan's face because he knows that he cheated his way to do this. And they have this sort of moment of acceptance. I think honestly is like an undertone set piece for everything that happens, or like an undertone piece for the movies. I think it's sort of the best one. What you were saying about the characters, I don't really connect to anybody in Heaven Can Wait. I kind of feel like there's a lot of one note boring stuff that happens in that movie that doesn't.
You don't connect to Warren Beatty, who is one of the most, he has so much going on because this is a guy who has basically been taken away from life too early and has been put in another body that is not built for him. And he is trying so hard to recapture his old life within this new body. You've got Jack Warden, who is kind of the heart of the movie, wanting to guide his friend while also knowing he doesn't have it.
Time. All right, Boatman, you get to close first. You got 1 minute when you start talking.
Ultimately, one of the biggest problems with the program is that, sure, you got a lot of characters who don't really, that takes away. But also, it's all cliches. It's all stuff we've seen 1,000 times before in other football movies. We've seen it in Semi-Tough. We've seen it in Wildcats. We've seen it in North Dallas 40. It's just that, we put all the cliches into one movie, so hopefully you don't notice, but ultimately we notice. Heaven Can Wait actually gives us a different, interesting take on the football movie because of the afterlife elements. You've got Warren Beatty, who, again, is stuck between being in this body, falling in love with a woman, and also wanting to be a professional athlete, even though this body doesn't cut it. And I think that's such a great dynamic. You've got the people trying to kill him. You've got the emotional moments towards the end with him realizing he's in his friend's body. There's so much going on where the program is just cliche on cliche.
Time. Okay. We move over to Robert for his 1 minute closing.
I think what Boatman mentions about the nuance that Heaven Can Wait is really front and center in the program. I think the relationships between Craig Sheffer and Christy Swanson's characters, between Ray and Darnell and their dynamic as they're fighting over Autumn. I think there's a lot of nuance in that that Boatman is sort of losing. I think everything is shot really well. Everything's choreographed great. There's a lot of dynamism within the program, which I think is lacking in Heaven Can Wait. There's weird stuff with the sound design and the music within that movie. The funny parts don't really hit. I think there's a lot of weirdness that happens, and I think it becomes more about a drama that just so happens that there's football, where I think the program is about a football team. And the interesting thing about the most nuanced thing is it's about the program. There's characters in it and there's a lot of heart. But honestly, after everything's done, the program just runs along. We get to the next thing. And that's the interesting part about the program as compared to every other football movie is we usually just care about the characters, but we care about sort of the life that's embodied with the program at ESU and how it's going to continue on even after we felt so much for not that many characters.
Time. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. Oh no, I lost my marker. There it is.
I'm not ready.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Bowman, whatever happens, good debate, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Ugh.
It's my favorite sound Tim makes. Ugh.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't take too much longer. I might change my answer for the fourth time.
Yeah, right. Okay. I honestly don't even know where to start with this. Oh, this was good. As all of these have been tonight. Close, and at least one of us is sitting here going, I don't know, man. Like I said, I haven't seen either of these movies. Had to go off what everyone was saying. I was convinced by Robert more that his movie was not only the better movie, but the better football movie as well. While I think that Boatman did a good job of explaining that his movie's got some things that are different for a football movie that add some variety, and that there's like a really strong performance from Warren Beatty. I just thought that Castner did a really good job also explaining why you just get more out of the program in that film more. I don't know. It was very close. This was tough. This was really tough. This one was the hardest one for me. So I went with Robert. Brian.
Yeah, I changed my answer several times. Neither of these would have been my picks. But it was interesting hearing both of them pitch these. Honestly, I think that Robert definitely could have put it away for me if he had attacked a little bit more on the fact that his is the better football movie, whereas I think Heaven Can Wait is more of just a movie that kind of has football as a backdrop. But he didn't really jump on that, and as a result, just as far as pitching the better movie, then at that point was Caleb.
Okay, Kirk. Are we moving on or are we done?
Yeah, I think I won't be one of those drama people. I went with Boatman as well. I think Boatman. I mean, Caleb jumped right. Robert gave his what he wanted out of a football movie, and right in his introduction, Boatman had some of that for him. He hit the football stuff early on in his intro. Really didn't talk about that much. And then there were certain times where he's saying, well, I didn't connect and things like that. And that's all a matter of opinion. But when he did it, I think he gave Boatman an opportunity to give, well, at least here are the things you can connect to. And I just think he came up with a little more depth. Like Brian said, when it became much more focused on just the movie, Heaven Can Wait, I think the argument for that was much stronger.
Okay, so we are moving on to the bonus round, my favorite. So here's how this is going to work. I am going to say a category And then I'm going to I'm going to let you guys know what the category is, and then I'm going to say the question from the category. So after I repeat, I'm going to say the question once, then I'm going to repeat it a second time. After I have repeated the question, you guys can then answer. So whoever says their answer first will be going first. You guys will get a 45-second to start, and then a 30-second after your opponent's 45 seconds. You can use your time however you want. Any questions about how this is going to work?
No.
All right. Don't hate me, hate the randomizer. So the randomizer randomized from the world of Warzone. And the category is horror. And the question is, what is the most underrated horror film of the 2010s? So, most underrated horror film of the 2010s.
One Cut of the Dead.
Okay.
I'll say The Visit.
Okay. So, One Cut of the Dead versus The Visit. All right. So, Boatman, you will be going first. I will stay on screen for the entire time to give you guys your countdowns. Boatman, you may begin when you start talking.
One Cut of the Dead is one of the best horror movies of the 2010s, period. The way that this film does it all in one take, doing the meta aspects of showing us a director shooting this zombie movie where we get the full one take of the zombie movie, and then a zombie apocalypse actually happens where we get some great kills and a lot of great differentiation between the two aspects of the film is awesome. It's incredibly underrated. It made zero money. I've never seen anyone really, it didn't make a lot of money. No one really brings it up. Ultimately, it's a small little foreign horror film, and it's fantastic. It is so good. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it.
Okay. Robert, 45 seconds when you start talking.
I mean, just because you haven't heard anybody talk about it doesn't mean it wasn't a movie of consideration in Japan. And I mean, we've seen a lot of meta horror movies and a lot of zombie movies, especially lately, that probably have done it better. But in The Visit, we have something where we have M. Night Shyamalan, who had done a string of bad movies, but he's coming back with a film that wasn't really appreciated because then there were things that came after that had more importance in the grand scheme of the M. Night Shyamalan universe. But I think the performances of the grandparents are some of the creepiest things that I've ever seen. How it is that the slow sort of descent into madness, these kids that have no guardian to assist them, how they are sort of bound to this and they have no way out. It's terrifying.
Time. Boatman, 30 seconds when you start talking.
Your movie is by definition not underrated because it made $100 million. It made $100 million at the box office. It's ultimately One Cut of the Dead. Your argument is that it might have been more popular in Japan. It wasn't. It didn't make that much money. Ultimately, and it has meta aspects. It does the meta aspects better than any horror movie has, the way it weaves the two in. Ultimately, Visit also is just a lesser movie because Ed Oxenbould, and especially his cringy rapping, is terrible. Ed Oxenbould is genuinely bad in your film. One Cut of the Dead is a genuinely well-shot, great horror concept.
Time. Robert, 30 seconds when you start talking.
I don't think the amount of money a movie makes necessarily speaks to the entirety of what makes it underrated. I think how it is that it's considered at the time in comparison to the director's other work at that time. I think Ed Oxenbould, I mean, that's one aspect. You mentioned the rapping. I think how it is that they play the hide and seek under the house, how it is that they think about pushing them in the oven. It's like a Hansel and Gretel fairy tale brought to life. It's terrifying. Zombie movies done dime a dozen.
Time. Okay. You're gonna go there, and you're gonna go there, and there we go. All right, I'm ready. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple fact-checking things. The Visit made 100 million worldwide, not domestically. One Cut of the Dead did make 27 million internationally. 99.8% of its box office came from Japan or from overseas, not necessarily.
And Robert didn't bring that up.
Boatman.
I'm just saying, I don't know if it's fair.
We already have our votes. I'm
Okay,
just
fair.
pointing out other stuff.
Fair, I didn't know that. I apologize.
That's all I'm doing. And I don't even remember what I was saying, so I'm just gonna move on. So I think that Boatman's opening was super strong, where because I had never heard of One Cut of the Dead. I definitely hadn't. So I think it definitely qualifies as an underrated film, a film that has a very interesting plot, really cool, interesting idea of a foreign film, and like the one-shot thing, and him explaining the film. I thought he did a good job of talking about why just it wasn't seen by a ton of people. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it. So I thought that was really strong, and he kind of convinced me of why this is a great movie that I should see. And then Robert came into it from a kind of different approach of like, hey, this is, like The Visit is a movie where like you have M. Night Shyamalan kind of going back to a horror roots type thing where there's some genuinely very, very creepy moments, and it kind of got pushed to the wayside because of stuff like Split and Glass that came afterwards. So they both kind of came to it from different perspectives. I'm also realizing now as I'm talking, I wasn't supposed to go first, so sorry. But at the end of the day, I went with Robert. I went with RC Cola. I thought that, like I said, all of those things, I thought it was really close, and I thought that at the end, Robert just convinced me of why this movie was just more underrated, not only as part of M. Night Shyamalan's films, but also just like horror in the 2010s. So yeah, it was close though. Who was I supposed to go to first?
Kirk should have gone first. I'll let him go next.
Kirk, you can go.
Okay. I feel bad for these guys because I know this isn't necessarily a category either of them wanted for speed round.
And that's why when I randomized it, I felt so bad.
And an underrated, overrated is the hardest thing to argue, like even in a prep round, let alone a speed round. So I did not envy them that. And yeah, they both picked good movies for the question. But ultimately, I went with Boatman. I think Boatman did more to. I mean, I think they both focused on too much on just their movie being good and why it's good. But I don't think Castner gave me that, other than the stuff about Shyamalan at the beginning, which he kind of trailed off on. I don't think he gave me enough as to why it was the most underrated. I know money's not a factor, but Caleb hit underseen money. Caleb hit more factors on what made it underrated, so that's why I went with him.
Okay, and Brian, you were deciding this. Who is moving on?
Yeah, for me, it was close all the way to the end. Honestly, what swung me was one line in the closing when Robert said that, just the amount of money something makes or its popularity doesn't necessarily mean underrated. It may be underseen, things like that, but I don't consider that really the same thing. Whereas most people, actually, I think everybody I know that's seen One Cut of the Dead considers it a great movie. So I went with Robert.
Okay, which means your winner, Robert Castner. So we are going to start by talking to Caleb. Caleb, this was probably the closest match of Fanzone we've had in a hot minute. It lived up to your last match of like a knockout where, I think on the first couple questions, it was like clear the whole way. And then all of a sudden, like it was split on the last few, and that was nuts. How are you feeling about the match?
Fine. I mean, I didn't put much effort into this, so like, yeah.
Okay. If you come back next, who do you want to play?
Give me Richard Schwartz. Actually, no. I don't know if he's the same record as me. Give me Andrew Barr.
Ooh, let me look while I still have you on screen. You don't have the same record, but the record's kind of match up. So I think we can make that work. We'll see what we can do. Great job today, Boatman. We're going to move on over to Robert. Robert, congrats. You are moving. Oh, and I accidentally took you out when I hit my hand down on the pen. You're moving on. You're in a number 1 contenders match against somebody. We'll talk about that soon. How are you feeling about the match today? Very close match all the way through.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I did put a lot of work into this because I care about things, especially when I'm going up against a cinematic mind like Boatman's. I respect him a lot. This is the most I've ever talked around or at Boatman. So I don't know if he actually, respects me in my movie ways at all. But even if he doesn't, I'm happy with how this went. Honestly, when we got to football, I told my wife when I was like, there's no way I lose the football. There's no way. I have so many points. There's no way. And then when I lost the football one, I was like, uh-oh, this is bad. Fortunately, it was the last one, so I could recover. No, this is great. I didn't get to say the line that Heaven Can Wait was super unrealistic because the Rams beat the Steelers in the 70s, which never would have happened anyway, but which would have tickled Kirk's funny. I don't know if it would have got me the point, but at least it would have tickled Kirk's funny one. No, this was very nerve-wracking. I drank like 2 gallons of water here as we were going through this. I'm just happy that I get to share this time with you guys. I know it's late. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to long form debate with you all because I'm proud of how this went.
Yeah. So you are moving on to the contender match. You will be playing Cody Newberry. He beat Richard Schwartz to get here. So that is who you are facing now. So it is the 2 rookies coming in to play for a shot at Kirk. So what do you think about playing Cody? Do you think you got a shot?
I will say that Cody and I probably differ very heavily in how it is that we will approach these debates, which is a fun thing to think about. I think it will be entertaining. I have not gotten a chance to watch Cody debate, so I will take the chance to do that. I would think I would have a shot. I think beating Boatman, helps sort of put me on a level that, I could maybe contend.
Absolutely.
But I'm looking forward to it either way. It's fun nonetheless.
Yeah. All right. So very exciting. I think both you and Cody are now 2-0 with a knockout. So that's pretty interesting going into this match. I'm looking forward to it. Robert, great job today. And let's get final thoughts from Kirk.
This was tough because, Robert definitely earned it, but I hate to see somebody lose when it's that close. Like every time I voted for Robert, I could have voted for, Boatman was close, but vice versa too. So, it could have went either way most rounds. So they both played great. Boatman, like I said, it just I think I was pretty confident in him in that speed round. So, but like you said, that's why there's 3 judges, and it played out how it did. But I think Boatman will be back and he'll do well. And Cody versus Robert is going to be a very interesting match.
Yeah, Brian, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, this is probably one of the closest ones that I've judged. I had like 1 round pretty clear for me each way, but then the last 2 were, like I said, toss-ups. I was going back and forth the entire time. So that's what we like to see here. Keep it close, keep it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to do it for us at Fanzone Debate today. Tune in 2 weeks' time to see that number 1 contenders match between Cody and Boatman. Also, other stuff coming up. We got Mike Hanley playing Joe Farrelly. That should be a very fun match. And then before you know it, we're at Mayhem at the Multiplex 4. Yes, it's the 4th one. I had to think about that for a second. So we will see you guys really soon with the next match. Thank you to Boatman. Thank you to Robert. And thank you to you guys for judging. We'll see you real soon with the next match. Bye-bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.